It's that time of year because we're waiting for like content to really start rolling that I was like, who do I do a character profile
Ah, yes. Who
on?
haven't we touched on?
Yes. Unfortunately, a while back I went through and like re-looked at everyone we've done, and I do try and keep that list up to date. And I realised I was missing a very, very cool character who I very openly said
Mm.
I enjoy, but who was also
Yes.
a part of the Spider-Man games. And
Oh,
and, and because I am playing this, I'm currently trying 100% the first Spider-Man game. I've been
you were
having to go through
reminded.
and do his side missions. So I was like, that is a brilliant option. So we're covering the Taskmaster. Um, Now, for the people who just watched the films, this character is going to be very different to what you have seen in the film.
Yeah.
And while might not necessarily understand why people who are aware of the character's origins are so angry about it, hopefully this will explain a bit better. So, the Taskmaster, aka Anthony Masters, first appeared in Avengers number 195 in February 1980. He is a former SHIELD agent turned mercenary and assassin. Taskmaster is best known for being able to replicate both the physical skills, um, combat, and athletic. So if he sees someone run and perform a perfect, I don't know, somersault, he can replicate that.
Yeah.
But he can also watch someone practice jujitsu for 10 minutes and replicate exactly what they did. It doesn't mean he
Yes.
masters it, he learns it to the level that he witnessed.
Yeah.
Um, and that is due to his photographic reflexes. Um, the interesting thing is this skill was then enhanced while he was a SHIELD agent.
Right.
While him and his partner were investigating something, they came across a old Nazi scientist who had been working on an experimental version of the super soldier serum,
Of course.
which he was then injected with.
Right. That makes
This
sense.
enhanced his photographic reflexes, but it came at a cost that his own memories would be overwritten,
Ah.
which meant he couldn't remember. His long term memory was shot to pieces.
Yeah.
This caused him to forget about his field partner, who was also his wife.
Ooh.
Now, as we often do, I can't confirm if this is or isn't. This is one of them things that feels like a bit of a retcon.
Okay.
He was then guided by his wife into his life as the Taskmaster, where he would work as mercenaries and assassins for hire for the criminal world.
Hmm.
But unbeknownst to him, he was actually the ultimate double agent because his wife was his handler.
Okay.
That feels like they used him as a villain for a while and they wanted to add more depth, so they went, okay, how can we make this work?
Hmm.
Feels like a retcon. Not
Yeah, it
necessarily a
does a
bad
little
one.
bit.
One of the better ones we've seen. We've seen some
Oh yeah, yeah,
howlers.
yeah. We have.
If this is a retcon, it's an okay one.
Mm.
Um, Eventually, he decided to capitalize on the sheer amount of superheroes that were in the world by starting the Taskmaster Academy. So he kind of put a lot of his life of crime per se behind him,
Yeah.
and started an academy where, by obviously studying people, he was able to then teach people. Um, Here he taught government agents, villains, heroes, and henchmen. He didn't give a fuck who turned up to his school. He would teach you regardless, as long as their checks cleared.
Fair. I
Uh,
can respect that.
the thing about the Taskmaster motivation is it's always just been financial. The guy doesn't give a fuck.
Mm.
He is just doing his job.
Yeah.
Which is why, other than when he gets paid, he doesn't really cause too much trouble because I'm not trying to get in a fist fight with Captain America or Hulk or
For
Deadpool
free.
or Spider Man for free. It's not worth
Yeah.
it.
Something needs to cover my insurance
Yeah.
policy.
Before long, he returned to his mercenary ways. However, they did kind of change his style. So previously, he would use like replications of the big heroes' weapons. So he had his own version of Captain America's shield and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
When he returned to being a mercenary, he got rid of all that kind of gimmicky stuff. and he just kind of used more traditional arsenal weapons, arsenal weapons. Um, and that
Okay.
kind of allowed him to be the character he is. Couple of notable mentions is he very canonically cannot fight Deadpool because,
Oh,
and I quote, he's too unpredictable. So he can
yeah.
watch him and remember what he's doing, but the way he fights is so erratic and unpredictable. He can never predict what he's going to do because that's a big way he learns to fight people. He watches Spider-Man solve crimes. He
Mm.
knows how he fights, so then he
Pick
can
on both
predict what
patterns
Spider-Man will do when he's going to fight him. Deadpool's so all over the place and stupid that
and
he
we'll do
can't
anything.
predict him. Yeah. One of my favorite ways this was shown was in, I think it was the Ultimate Spider-Man TV show,
Oh.
where in the middle of the fight, he looks like he's about to throw a punch. And as Taskmaster's getting ready to block it, it cuts away. And as it cuts back to Deadpool, he's got a sombrero on and he's cooking enchiladas. And it's a really silly way to show it, but there's kind
Yeah.
of that idea of, yeah, he might look like he's about to punch you, but fuck knows what he's really trying to do. So
I
that's
love
quite
that.
cool. I love the Taskmaster as a villain. I would be very, very happy for them to make a underarching story, because I think everyone's kind of the opinion with the MCU after the multiverse saga. We're going to kind of get like 3 levels of MCU. We're going to get street level, then we're going to have your standard kind of superhero films, then you're going to have your big event films.
Hmm.
I would be very okay if they wanted to give the street level a overarching story where he was like popping up regularly
Right.
as
Yeah.
like a villain for your Daredevils, your Spider-Man,
Hmm.
your Miss Marvels to have to fight.
Yeah.
Maybe under the payroll of a Kingpin or something. I think that could be very interesting.
Well, we potentially will be having them as a thunderbolt.
Yeah. So here's my problem with the MCU's interpretation. And anyone who had an issue with Taskmaster being a woman is just thick because it actually doesn't make any difference.
No.
The problem is they got rid of Taskmaster's sense of humor. They got rid of the wittiness, and they made Taskmaster essentially just a slave who remembers everything.
Yeah, it was just like a.
It's like super henchman. It's like when you're
Yeah.
like playing a game and you've got the basic
Yeah.
henchmen that you beat up, but then after a certain point they add
Then the
the
game
more
saves,
difficult
and you're like,
henchmen.
oh, there's a.
Yeah, and then you get like the bigger henchman. It's not quite a boss fight, but it's a bit more difficult. That's
Mhm.
all Taskmaster was used for in Black Widow, which that's what annoyed me because Taskmaster is so good.
Yeah, it's like they took the idea of in the comics his wife being a handler, and they were like, "Ooh, we could do something like that." But then they went too far with that, and it was
Yeah,
less handler and more controller.
yeah. Taskmaster felt more like a
And
robot than a
yeah,
person. Um, but
they
they
could
can
save it.
recover that with Thunderbolts.
Yes, and with the fact that like she's been freed now, so like she.
Yes, because you got to remember that was before, like canonically, that was like during the time between Civil War and Infinity War.
God, yeah, it was when it was
So
ages ago.
this is like 7 years later in the timeline.
Yeah, there's a lot.
So they can recover this character absolutely,
Yeah.
and that is what I hope they do. Now,